been a year since President Vladimir Putin announced what he called Russia's special military operation in Ukraine, leading to the largest war in Europe since World War II. President Zelensky has led a commemoration service in the capital, Kiev. Now, ceremonies are also being held in cities across Ukraine to remember the thousands of people who lost their lives and the millions who've been displaced since the start of the conflict.
Now, on the front lines, Russia controls much of the territory east of the Dnipro River. But a Ukrainian counter-offensive in autumn reclaimed swathes of land in the north and south, including the key city of Kherson. Now the focus is on the city of Bakhmut, which President Zelensky says has been reduced to ruins by the Russian offensive.
Well, still in Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky addressed the nation as the war with Russia enters its second year. The president said the country had withstood everything Russia launched its way and has come out stronger.
Тому у цей день, цього ж місця, близько 7 ранку я звернувся до вас.
A year ago, on this day, from this very place, at about 7 in the morning, I addressed you with a short statement. It lasted only 67 seconds. It contained the two most important things, then and now. That Russia started a full-scale war against us, and that we are strong. We are ready for anything. We will defeat everyone, because we are Ukraine. That is how February the 24th, 2022 began. The longest day of our lives, the hardest day of our modern history. We woke up early and haven't fallen asleep since. One way or another, we will liberate all our lands. We will do everything for Ukraine to return. And to all those who are now forced to stay abroad, we will do everything for you to return to Ukraine. We will do everything to make it possible. We will fight and bring back every single one of our captive soldiers. Only all this together will be a victory.
Now, Rice Chief Correspondent John Cookson joins us live from Kiev's Independence Square. John, it's good to have you here on Newsday. Thank you for joining us. Saw your report on Bucha, very thorough as usual. But it's the first anniversary of the war. What's the mood in Kiev?
Hi there, ladies. Great to be on Newsday, and good afternoon from the heart of Kiev here, as you say, in Liberation Square. There's a huge sigh of relief that the expected Russian bombing blitz to mark the first anniversary has not happened so far. No air raid sirens echoing across the city as so have often happened in the past, and life is going on pretty much as normal. People hunkered down. The city's not particularly busy, but the shops are open and people are going about their business, meeting friends and meeting in cafes that are open. As I said yesterday, things are pretty much functioning as normal. Theatres are open, cinemas, that kind of thing. So fingers crossed. The expected Russian assault to mark the anniversary has not happened yet. But let's not get too dewy-eyed over all of this. This is just a picture here in the north of Ukraine. Down south, the cities like Kherson still being shelled every day, Srebrenica too, and the so-called meat grinder on the front line is in overdrive at the moment, with hundreds of soldiers from both sides dying every day. Talking of which, I was a short time ago at a funeral of a Ukrainian soldier who sadly lost his life on the battlefield down south, the funeral at a famous cathedral here in Kiev, and very, very moving it was too, with family and friends and his comrades joining in the marking of his passing, the priest saying solemn prayers. So a sharp reminder, of course, that for ordinary people and for the soldiers on the front line, nothing really has changed. We're marking the first anniversary and entering the second year, which to many people is a grim milestone.
Certainly is a morbid time. Now, from a global perspective, China has come up with a peace plan. Now, what do you think is the likely response to this?
It's not going to fly, I'm afraid. President Zelensky earlier said that he was open to listen to the Chinese with whatever plan they have, and it's a 10-point plan which basically says that Russian troops stay where they are, frozen in the position that they're at the moment, so in the territory that they've seized since last year, and all sanctions against Russia, which have not been approved by the Security Council, be lifted. Well, nations like America and the UK are never going to agree with that. In fact, the UK have announced a fresh range of sanctions against Russia today. So, it was a good idea for the Chinese to have a go at trying to bring peace to this troubled region, but the peace plan that they put forward really is not something which is acceptable either here in Kiev or to Western governments.
Well, thank you, John. You visited the scene of one of the worst atrocities so far. What did you find there? Yes,
around this time last year, just less than a year, of course, one of the worst atrocities ever committed so far in this campaign. We went to Bucha, a wonderful, beautiful town just north of Kiev, about an hour's drive, where it was once in Russian hands when Russian forces were trying to blast their way through to Kiev, and sadly for the people who lived there, they were caught very much in the crossfire, and many were massacred, up to 400 men, women and children. Let's take a look at my report from the scene.
Amid the darkness of war, it seems the human spirit still shines bright. As the conflict in Ukraine enters its second year, massive Western funding is beginning to have an impact, not least in Bucha, where they're rebuilding homes in Railway Street, scene of arguably one of the cruelest massacres this century. But amid the rebuilding, families here cannot forget. 87-year-old Zainida recalls the day her life was turned upside down when Russian soldiers entered the town and shot her neighbours dead in front of her eyes.
Everyone they saw on the street, they just shot them. I saw one man escaping from his house when they bombed it. He ran out with no clothes on, and they gunned him down. Crazy things were happening. If you ask me, Putin is worse than Hitler.
Russian soldiers killed residents of the town in a campaign of terror. Many victims were found with their hands tied. Civilians were shot as they tried to leave their homes to find food and water. Today, Arise News was handed this video showing the scene immediately after the Russians were pushed out by Ukrainian forces. By then, according to the mayor, 400 men, women and children had lost their lives to Russian cruelty and aggression. In the grounds of St. Andrew's Church, priest Father Andrei Halavan spoke of the resilience of his parishioners.
We want to rebuild Bucha as a town where people want to live, and for it not to be known as a place of tragedy. We will succeed.
At a cemetery on the edge of town, most of the victims have been exhumed from mass graves and given a decent burial, while Western investigators build up a crimes against humanity case against individuals in the Russian military.
And here to me is the most poignant part of the graveyard. It's the section for the unknowns. They all have names, but no one knows who they are. But they are fathers, mothers, sons, brothers, daughters. All of them died when the Russians stormed into town and massacred more than 400 people. All of them victims of a huge war crime that shocked the world. John Cookson, Arise News, Bucha, Ukraine.
Right, now, of course, we also see the memory of them as John Cookson is in Kiev. We see the flags are flying at half-mast. But, John, what are the chances of the Russians who murdered civilians being brought to justice?
I'd like to say there's a very good chance, but I've just come from a press conference a short time ago where, it was really laid out to me that the chances are very slim. Do you know there are 87,000 cases so far in this conflict of alleged war crimes which have to be investigated? It's just the scale of things, and the Ukrainians just don't have the lawyers or officials to deal with that number of investigations. And look, the Russian soldiers who possibly carried out the war crimes in Bucha and elsewhere are now back in Russia. And, you know, the chances of having them being extradited to face trial in the War Crimes Tribunal, it's just so slim. I spoke to a Ukrainian legal expert about Bucha in particular, and I asked her what are the chances of Russian soldiers being brought to book?
Hopefully we will see the result, but again, there are many questions as to the effectiveness of the current justice and accountability mechanisms. We have several that are active now. One of them is International Criminal Court. We have national investigations ongoing, but all of them have their limitations, and it remains to be seen. I mean, all we can do is to document to the best of our ability, to the best standard, and hope that either it's going to be an international institution working side by side with national system, or it's going to be purely national. The victims will see the results that they are hoping for.
But you don't sound very hopeful.
I don't, because we've been observing the work of the many mechanisms, and unfortunately they all have their limitations, which are quite serious in that they might not be able to be as effective as we want them to be.
So those soldiers will get away with murder?
There is always a chance, yes.
Many thanks to our Arise chief correspondent, John Cookson, live from Kiev's Independence Square. Thank you so much, John.